Hey there, and welcome to the Board Game Entrepreneur Podcast presented by Maple Leaf. I am Nick Angiers. Today, our special guest is the one and only Omari Akil. So, Omari Akil, he'll tell you a bit more about himself, but what I know about him is that he's the founder of a board game company called Board Game Brothas, and he's the designer of Hoop Godz and Rap Godz. Oh, not in that order. I'll let you do it. Why don't you go for it?
Sure. I'm Omari Akil, and I am a co-founder of Board Game Brothas. And so, we've released one game so far, which was Rap Godz, and I was the lead designer on that. And I'm also the lead designer on Hoop Godz, which is the second game that is going to be published and released later this year.
Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait for that Kickstarter to ship. So you do other stuff too, lots of other things. So why don't you tell us a bit about your day job and your background?
Well, in terms of day job, I actually left my day job, quote unquote, about 2 years ago now. I guess we're approaching 2 years. I was working in tech. I was a business analyst, a business system analyst for UNC Chapel Hill, and eventually their business school. I kind of was turned into a data integration specialist for a little bit before I left UNC. And basically leaving that position and that role was to focus more on board games full time. Which is why I do all the different things that I do in board games. So just the publishing itself isn't, especially when you're just starting out, isn't normally enough to kind of sustain, in a normal income for a couple people, definitely. So I ended up kind of, even before I left UNC, kind of dipping my toes in different areas of the board game world. I think the first one I really stepped into was content creation. I started doing media and offering media and content, of course, for board games through Tabletop Backer Party, which is a media team that, people can hire for various reasons. Everybody kind of has an opportunity to produce a different type of show. We were striving for really, Daniel Zayas, who runs that team and kind of started that company, wanted a diverse group of people who brought really unique things to board game content. So he was really not looking for the standard type of content. And so I got into that, and I tried out a few different shows. So I have two that I'm kind of settled on, that I'm happy with, that I do through Tabletop Backer Party. But that's not the only thing I do. I actually also do some board game design consulting on the side as well. And so I have a couple clients that I'm working with now. I have one more that's actually a bigger client that's going to be starting up a little later this year. So that's another place that I've kind of have been able to supplement that income coming from the tech world.
See, I told you he did lots of things. Okay, let's take these one at a time. So let's start with the streaming. This is really interesting because not a lot of people in the board game industry have gotten into streaming. There's a lot of YouTube reviews, lots and lots of reviews. I think at this point we have enough reviewers, maybe, but there's always more games coming out, so I might be wrong. So tell me a bit about your streaming. How long have you been doing it, and what is the content that you chose about?
Yeah, so I actually do two shows. So one is streaming and one is pre-recorded and sort of like produced in the standard way you might think of like a YouTube video production going. And that was actually my first one. So the first one's called The Breakdown. And what I felt like I brought to the table was a kind of unique and interesting game design perspective. And I don't mean like unique and like interesting in the sense that I have some like amazing insight, but I think where I come from and my game design journey is very different from a lot of people. And so I wanted to basically have that be on display in some way. So the first show that I came up with was called The Breakdown, and that's really where I do I would say, sort of a mid-level analysis of a game and kind of present more so of, okay, this is what the game is about. These are the things that are interesting, but I also do a pre-interview with the designer typically. And that gives me a little more insight into the process. And then on the show, I also talk about the process of kind of how they got to some of the design elements that they ended up with in the final game with. And I like to include, and this was actually Daniel's idea, I like to include inspirations that sort of fueled some of the ideas in the game, because our game, as game designers, we're kind of very familiar with the process of game design and how a lot of our ideas stem from what we see in other games, like strange combinations of things that we think might work great together that we've seen kind of in pieces, parts all over the industry. And we're bringing a lot of these ideas together to create new stuff. And I really wanted to talk about that more, because I feel like that's a part of a reason why the game design community is so, I think, just nice and fun to be a part of, because there's this idea that we're all borrowing from each other all of the time and learning from each other all the time. And it feels less like a competitive, like, oh, I'm trying to build the new thing that's different and better than everybody else's. So that was a way to kind of highlight that through that show. It's like, yeah, these inspirations are important, and I wanted to highlight that piece. The second show is the streaming show that I came up with, which is not that original, but I think I'm one of the first people to do it online on a regular basis. And that show is called Jam Session. And it is basically a 2-hour game design jam where I sit down, and kind of along the same lines of The Breakdown, I always use a game as the inspiration for that session. So for instance, last night I did one for Kingdoms of the Deep, which is on Kickstarter right now. That was my basis for a game design jam. And so I described the elements of that game that I think are interesting and cool. And then I try to come up with something new in usually between an hour and a half and 2 hours. And yeah, really just show that process, that initial process of this is what game design sort of looks like. And that was my goal with that, really exposing people to, I wanted to demystify in some sense, like this is what game design looks like. And it's only a tiny snippet of it, but I think it's important for people to see. So yeah, and I've been doing that one roughly, I guess I just really got started with that one this past month. I did one episode in November to kind of practice and make sure I understood how it should work. But lately I've done a few, and it's going great so far.
Okay, that sounds awesome. So in both cases, it seems like it's more of a deep dive into a game instead of just like, here's the components of the game, here's how it plays. Are you interested in this game? So more of a detailed perspective, and also interviewing the creator, I think, is a neat twist on it too, because then you get some inside stories about the origins of the game. So you do these live on Twitch?
I do Jam Session live on Twitch.
Okay.
And The Breakdown, I actually do all of that pre-recorded, and I edit that down into like a 5 to 7 minute video. And then we drop that on YouTube and all these social media platforms.
Right. So from a business perspective, people who aren't familiar with Twitch, it is possible to make money on Twitch. So how does that work? How can you factor that into your income?
Yeah, so it's kind of two pieces, right? Because I'm working, so I can be hired through Tabletop Backer Party to produce these videos. But I felt like Twitch was a great platform to establish and build a community there for these types of shows, because Twitch also allows you to make some income it seemed like a really good fit also for me. So I ended up, yeah, this part was really strange. I think I started seeing the value of Twitch in terms of like there's some really really great creators there. Ross from More Games Please, Ruel Gaviola is fantastic. Amanda Panda, like they're putting together interesting content on Twitch. And I was like, okay, I think I should get into this too, especially while it's in its infancy, and we can kind of shape what board game Twitch looks like. And you can generate income from that, and it's based on viewership mainly. So if once you are an affiliate, you can basically people can subscribe to your channel at that point, and they can also spend bits on your channel, which is the in-game or like in-platform currency that Twitch offers. And so, yeah, it's mostly based on viewership and kind of participation and engagement of the viewers in the chat while you're streaming. And the income there is, it's not huge. The subscriptions are typically around like between $3 and $5 per month. So you're not talking about a lot per viewer, but the idea is that you are building up community and you are growing, and that eventually, yeah, you can kind of make a decent income just from Twitch alone. And so it was really, I think, great for me to be able to start on that platform and then use Tabletop Backer Party and have people book me through that to sponsor some of those Twitch streams, which is, yeah, the one I talked about before. That was a sponsor stream. So it's kind of nice to blend those two. So you have some things that are kind of prepaid and sponsored, and then I'll also have the residual income from just continuing to do it on a regular basis.
So do subscribers need to be paid subscribers to watch your content?
No, they don't. So anyone can follow you. And so, yeah, the subscription is just a choice that people make. It does come with some perks, and you can kind of set those perks up. By default, they get access to emotes. And emotes are just your own personal branded for your channel. Yeah, like emoticons that people can use while they're in chat. And if they're a subscriber of yours, they can also use them in anyone else's chat. So if you're a frequent Twitch user, you kind of have, and you're subscribing, you have access to all these different ways you can express yourself out in the community, which I think in terms of Twitch as a platform is really ingenious. And that's why I think it has exploded in the video game scene. And really, I think the board game community has a really good opportunity there. So yeah, we're all just kind of dabbling in it. I feel like Brothers Murph is the channel and team that has been around probably the longest. I think they've been doing it 2 or 3 years. They were doing it before it was cool and pre-pandemic, which I think is important because a lot of us kind of got into it when we were seeking the connection and being able to connect and play games online now.
Very, very cool. Yeah, if you're listening to this, nowadays there are all kinds of ways that you can not do a normal job. This is one of them. Okay, so let's get to Board Game Brothas. What was that?
Yeah, so many ways.
Yeah. And yeah, Twitch is a very interesting platform, and it really takes down the gatekeeper step, just like Kickstarter has done. YouTube, yeah, Kindle publishing. Yeah, you can do all kinds of things without having to pitch it to a company. You can just send it directly to your viewers.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So Board Game Brothas, I love the name. Tell us a bit about the founding. Why did you decide to found this, and who's the other brother or brothers?
Yeah, so it's actually me and my real life brother, Fahamu Dennis. He goes by Hamu most of the time in the board game world, and so he actually is kind of the reason we started the company. I was really just hanging out with him, and we were talking about games, and I had been playing sort of modern board games, and I had been involved a tiny bit in the hobby game industry for a little while. And I was just playing games with him and showing him some of the new cool things that I was playing with. And he started talking about the idea of a hip hop game, or asking me about it. And I was like, I mean, I don't think there's something like that. I haven't been around long enough really to know, but I wasn't familiar with anything like that. And that really started us down the path of, yeah, we're potentially gonna create a game to fit in this space that's related to hip hop. And we started that process, not knowing for sure that we would start a company. And it didn't take very long, actually. I think probably less than a year into designing that game, we realized that we were filling a huge gap in the industry in terms of games that like represented Black culture, broader than hip hop. And it was like, okay, if this is a need, if this is a gap that we can, kind of put ourselves in, and if we enjoy it, then we should continue. And I think that going through the process of designing Rap Godz, and we told ourselves we would self-publish so we could see what the entire process looked like, really, so we could learn the sort of industry standards for publishing games. And once we went down that road and got our feet wet, we realized, this was something we were definitely capable of, and that we could excel in if we really put the time in. So it was like, yeah, let's start a company. Let's build a brand that is creating these games. And the name Board Game Brothas was actually kind of connected to one of my favorite websites, Very Smart Brothas, and they have kind of in-depth analysis, but they're also hilarious about just like social issues and media and entertainment. They just have really, really good, and I'm always impressed with how well they're able to connect with anyone on their platform, and really speak in a voice that is so authentic and true and real. And I'm like, okay, I kind of came up with the name, or thought about that name being a little bit connected to what they're doing there, and wanting to hopefully live up to that standard.
It's definitely a great name. It's short and it's catchy and it's clear. Like the games you make celebrate Black culture, right? So you've got Rap Godz was the first one. Tell us a bit
Mhm.
about the game itself. What do you do in the game?
So in Rap Gods, you are basically telling your story of your rap career, kind of starting from nothing, which is a very common element of hip hop, is like getting out of a bad place and using music to do that. And so, yeah, the game was really trying to let you go through that process and take part in that journey. And so, with that being the kind of idea behind the game, we developed I would call it a tableau builder in a way. We really needed the game to be a gateway game, for lack of a better terms, because we wanted people who are not necessarily in the board game world, the new modern board game world, to see our game and see how it's played and be interested in it. So we kept the mechanics pretty straightforward, where you're building a career. It takes place through 3 albums, which we kind of separated to be able to give you some type of progression through your career. So you're basically like releasing 3 albums. And then as you play through the game, you're just playing cards that are things that can happen in your life and in your career. And they'll basically boost your rap stats, which we have defined as streets, which is like your street smarts. And we have skills, which is like your rap skills. And we have swag, which is like your image. And those three resources is basically what drives all of the gameplay. So you're competing with all of the rappers in these three resources. You're competing to try to take over cities. You're starting beef with one another to try to like knock each other down sometimes. But all of that is for the purpose of, at the end of the game, you've played these roughly 15 cards that actually tell a story from how you got from the start of your career to selling out a stadium or winning a major music award, because all of those cards are just cards that are in the game.
Excellent. Yeah, it sounds very cool. And sounds like you really know what you're doing with the game, not just taking a theme that you think is in big demand and slapping it onto a game. Sounds great. I can't wait to try it. And your spiritual successor to that one is Hoop Godz. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so Hoop Godz is actually the third game that we worked on in terms of the company, and it was our love letter to our childhood, I think, in a lot of ways, because we both grew up. My brother grew up in the neighborhood. Him and his friends played basketball all the time. The house, he's older than me, so the house that we moved into when I was growing up, we live right next to a basketball court. So it was kind of always in my periphery, no matter what. Even though I played a lot, it was just always there. And so the sounds, the personalities that come out from the court, all of those things, I think, resonated with both of us. And so we wanted to create a game that really tried to embody those like neighborhood street ball elements. There's kind of like a fancy version of street ball that exists, and we really we're trying to go for that like down home feel, that neighborhood feel, and we wanted to create a game that really had that. Going through that process was tough. Designing a sports game is harder than I imagined because of how you have to design and how you have to abstract sports out in order to create a compelling game. Was way harder than I thought. But we landed in a really sweet spot, I think, with Hoop Godz, where we combined a sort of very strategic element. So we created an energy system called the juice system, where you are managing the energy of all the players on the court kind of as a team as you take actions on the court. And both players are doing that. So there's this balance, this back and forth between, do I have enough energy to do what I want to do on my turn? And also, do I have enough energy to prevent my opponent from doing what they're going to do on their turn? So you're constantly kind of trying to figure that out in the gameplay. But we needed some part of the game that was more energetic, that felt more like what you would feel when you're on the court. And so we ended up with a real-time dice rolling element. So anytime the actions that you play against your opponent clash on the court, you both have to roll dice as fast as you can to try to match symbols in order to do your action successfully. And so that back and forth between the strategic and the like high energy real time just really came together nicely, and I think makes a really unique experience, especially just bringing the action of a sport, especially basketball, to the board game space.
So in terms of gameplay, it sounds like it's actually quite different from the tableau building of Rap Godz, where it's more of frenetic, dynamic. So everything's, well, you have the one element that's in real time, but then you have the strategy, as opposed to Rap Godz, where it's more over like a career time span.
Yeah, and we actually
on those.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we connected them really. They're both in the God's universe, I think, because of the art styles are similar, and also we gave the characters personality. Like that was the big piece for us. Also, in hip hop, it was kind of obvious. It's like big personalities are how you make it. So we made all the playable characters in Rap Godz just like really powerful personalities. And so we did the same thing at Hoop Godz because we wanted something to transfer between the two games. So even though mechanically they're very different, they both have those big personalities in terms of the players that you can select to play the game with.
Awesome. Yeah, while we're on this topic, let's touch a little bit on the Black Lives Matter movement, because this has been something that in the past couple of years, a lot of people have been supporting the community. So I think it was really good timing to start this company. And do you think that this movement factored into your decision to like, okay, this is the time to do this now?
Not really. I mean, we were already pretty deep into it. So yeah, Rap Godz was released before really the Black Lives Matter movement took off and really exploded in the world. So we really hadn't factored it in. We really only understood that this was important in a more general way when we started the company. I think in 2017 is what I put on the sticker. So I'm assuming that's true. I think I looked it up. So yeah, that was the beginning of the company. And so, you know, in 2020, when all of these things started to happen, what we recognized very quickly was that us being visible in the industry was important, because the movement itself sort of recognizes that our voices should be lifted up. And it would be really, I think, tragic if there weren't more, or if there weren't enough Black publishers, Black designers in the industry to even have that opportunity, right? Like, and so a part of my mission also with Board Game Brothas is to be visible, so that we can encourage more Black designers or more people who are maybe interested in game design or just the board game business side of things to take a serious look and see if this is a place that they can find themselves and find a home. So we're hoping that we're creating or helping to create that environment where Black folks can see what we're doing and say, hey, this is something I can do. Because the more that we can be a part of this community, I think the better off everybody is going to be. I'm hoping that, you know, we just bring interesting, different views and perspectives into what we present in our games.
I think that diversity is definitely a good thing, and thank you for your contribution. When I was compiling the list of people to approach for this show, what I didn't want it to turn into was middle-aged white guys, the show. So the more different perspectives we can have, the better, because then if a guy like me made a game about rappers, it would be terrible, because I know nothing about that. I don't have that background, but I definitely like to play that because I'm curious. Games are a great way to explore different ideas and different perspectives. So that is awesome that you're doing that. Okay, and final question. I like to wrap things up with a kind of a fun question for my guests. So what awesome thing do you want to give a shout out to? It can be anything from, I don't know, your own game that you have coming up, or it can be like some show that you saw recently. Whatever you want.
I really want to give a shout out to another designer that I think has really impressed me in a short time span. Jay Bell is a designer. He's also from Louisiana, so that's cool. And he has very recently, I think I met him at PAX Unplugged. So this was 2019, I think, at PAX Unplugged. And when we met, I only talked to him for probably like 20, 30 minutes initially. And what I saw was somebody who was very interested in games and how they work. I believe at that time he was already like starting to design some games. And recently he gave a brilliant pitch in the as a part of the Unpub panel they had like a feedback frenzy panel. He gave a really good pitch, and I saw the game that he showed there. And so I just, and I've been in communication. We've been talking throughout the couple years that we've known each other now, but I just saw so much progression in this kind of 2-year time span, not even 2 years. Just in terms of somebody who is passionate, driven, really wants to be in this industry, and is actually putting in the work to learn the game design aspects, to learn how the industry works. If you go on his Twitter, he's started several really awesome conversations about sell sheets and the pitch process, and has gotten so much great feedback and started so much great conversation. So shout out to Jay Bell, who is just continuing to do exactly what I think needs to be done in the industry. I think he's also started to do some board game content with Board Game Gumbo as well. So yeah, it's been just very, very, very fantastic to watch Jay just like make a space for himself in the industry.
Very cool. So where can we find Jay? And most importantly, where can we find you?
So you can find Jay Bell. He is the Jay Bell on Twitter. And if you're looking for me, I actually go by my Twitch handle now on all the social media, which is Akilaverse, AKIL, which is my, looks like my last name, but it's actually my middle name. So Akilaverse, AKILAVERSE.
Excellent. Okay, well, that wraps it up. Thank you so much, Omari. This was a really fun and interesting conversation. And good luck with all the various projects that you got going on right now. I'll let you get back to work. You're a busy man.
Thanks.